Welcome back to the Herbalist Hour. Today, I'm really excited to have on Jade Alicandro. Welcome to the show, Jade.
Hi, thank you, Mason.
Welcome to the Herbalist Hour. This is where community gather, merging the power of people and flowers, the sweet and the bitter to the salty, the sour. Umami, it's time for the Herbalist Hour.
Glad to have you here. And I'd like to, kick things off of the show, get to know Jade a little bit more. So, Jade, what were you like as a kiddo?
I always loved plants, always loved nature, kind of like the classic herbal story. I had a patch of woods behind our house. I lived in the suburbs, but it was an undeveloped, like 10-acre patch of woods. And probably the main sort of herbal thing that I did growing up was an ongoing, like years and years long game that I had with a cousin where we would literally just pretend that we were like lost in the woods. We'd gather food. We'd like make these little like packets and store them. We'd have little like food caches and, so essentially like foraging, but things that I didn't eat because we didn't have anyone that really could teach us what we could and couldn't eat. But there was always like this pretty big connection with just wanting to be interacting with the plants. And then, just a lot of time in the woods in general. So, yeah.
What city did you grow up in?
I grew up in East Longmeadow, Massachusetts. So it's a suburb of Springfield, Western Massachusetts, in the Connecticut River Valley. So it's changed a lot, like so many places, but totally a suburb, like straight up, and just really lucky to have access to a lot of nature close by. And then this little, like, amazing patch of woods that really like raised me in a lot of ways. It was really special. It had a lot of wetlands. So that was why it wasn't couldn't be developed.
Do you, to this day, kind of have like an affinity for the wetlands and the wetlands plants?
I do actually. Yes, I do. And actually, yeah, skunk cabbage is
Mm.
like an amazing one, cinnamon fern. So like all of those woods were pretty incredible because in the summer it's kind of like a temperate rainforest in the Northeast in the summer. It just gets so lush and they were kind of like impenetrable. So like really humbling, and just to watch something like skunk cabbage over the course of a season, like how huge it gets in 5 minutes, basically. So yeah, I do. I love all the wetland plants, and yeah, I'm always like mucking around in bogs and well, not bogs because they're so sensitive. I wouldn't walk in a bog, but like
Sure.
wetlands.
Did you
Yeah.
have cattail at all, or did you work with cattail?
No, there wasn't cattail. There was a cranberry bog, which was
Mm.
really amazing. That it was such a like classic suburban landscape. So they had attempted to develop and then couldn't probably because of wetland rules. And so they dug out this big, massive hole basically. And then now as I've grown older, I've kind of really realized how succession occurred there because cranberries came in. And it's like, it's not like anybody planted cranberry. It was like they're native, so it was either like they were in the seed bank or some animals brought it. That's sort of, it would have been cattail, but for some reason it was cranberries, which those we did eat. Those we knew we could eat. So that was really fun. And that patch is still there.
So you were a young kiddo mucking around in the wetlands and whatnot. What kind of brought you to like the world of herbalism and start taking it seriously?
Yeah, I came out of plant biology and botany. So, in college, I was like undecided for a while, and then I decided to major in wildlife and fisheries conservation, and that was really cool. But then when I got to my upper level classes, it was all management, and I was like, this isn't really what I wanted. I wanted like biology, and so I was able to declare a second major. And because all of my electives that I had taken were in plant bio, like I had just been like, okay, I'm going to take plant ecology, plant morphology, plant evolution. So I was able to add a plant biology major with only staying like a couple other extra semesters, basically. And then my first job out of school was with the Forest Service out west identifying plants. And that was like, for this big study. And that was where I just fell in love because we had to collect plants for the study for samples, for controls. And I loved harvesting things. It's like as I did when I was a child as well. And some of my books had little ethnobotanical uses, or it might talk about, like a few medicinal uses. And I remember finding catnip for the first time. That was probably one of the first plants I like found in the wild, basically, and like harvesting it to dry and to smoke because I was, I don't know, 22 or 3 or something. And then that like sealed the deal for me as like the weird plant girl, like on the study. And it just went from there. So I did that kind of field work seasons, like on and off, and traveling in between for a few years. And then I moved back to Western Mass, where I'm from and where I went to college. I went to UMass Amherst, because there's just a really rich herbal community here, and was even then. And basically, it's kind of one of those like the rest is history. Like, plants grabbed me, and I studied with like every teacher in the Northeast, basically, who I could like, meet with. So, yeah.
Yeah, I know you're a legit clinical herbalist, but I also, when I think of Jade Alicandro, I think of culinary. What
Yeah.
has cooking influenced your herbalism and whatnot? And when did you start getting into food and all that?
Yeah, so I mean, I feel like I should definitely give a shout out to my first ever herbal teacher was Tony Lamos at Blazing Star Herb School, which is still here in Western Mass. It's celebrating its 25th year. Really amazing.
Wow.
And I remember she one day she sent us up to her library and she was like, I just want you guys to research culinary herbs for like an hour. I don't remember how long, and I remember going through some of her books, researching all the different culinary herbs, and literally just having like my mind blown and just being like, whoa, like just that aha moment of like, wait, thyme can do like all these things. And just being like absolutely enamored with that. So she, I feel like, really brought the food as medicine forward from like the very beginning of my herb studies. And then I feel like having kids is what really like pushed me into it more. They're older now, but when they were little, like it's hard. I mean, I definitely did the like, let's introduce them to all the different tastes and things like that. But I just found that in general, having food as medicine is like the foundation in our kitchen was like just the best way to keep them healthy and support our health. So it kind of came from like both those places. So
Do your kids join you in the kitchen very often?
not anymore. They used to when they were like toddlers. Now they're like 14 and 11.
Oh,
So
okay.
they're like the 11-year-olds like going on 14, because like so if there's like chopping involved, like if there's like knives, they're like, yeah, let me chop, they're like into
Totally.
that. But not like I do miss that like intrepid toddler time. Like I still have like herbal honeys we made together where they'll just so into like anything you're doing. Now it's a little bit of the opposite. They're like, that is so not cool. But it'll circle back. All my friends who are herbalists that are older and have kids, they're gonna call you in their 20s and be like, Mom, what do I take? Like, so
Absolutely. Well,
yeah.
you mentioned Blazing Star, which I have actually heard of that school in 25
Yeah.
years. That is very impressive. I'm
Yeah.
curious who have been some of your other herbalist mentors along the way.
Yeah, so I definitely have to mention William Sif. So, like my formative years of herbalism. So, right at that same time when I started my first apprenticeship at Blazing Star, came back from working out west, to like really study herbs. I somehow like magically got a job at this herbal apothecary, Gold Thread Herbal Apothecary, which now they make drinks. But that was, I mean, it was like straight out of Diagon Alley. Like it was tiny, like you just walked right in, like a long, like rectangle, the counters right at the back, and then the herb jars up to the ceiling. Like it was just an amazing place. And he's a really, really skilled herbalist, trained in Chinese medicine, like doctor of Chinese medicine of herbs and acupuncture, highly trained in Ayurveda and Western herbalism. And so I ended up working there on and off for, I always forget, like 7 or 8 years. It was during the years that I had my kids. So I would like take a year off when I was postpartum with them and then come back and go really part-time. And I learned so much from him because he had a thriving herbal practice. And so I made everyone's formulas. I worked with people over the counter. I learned when to refer them for consultations with him and when to be like, oh, we can mix you up a tea for your, well, we'd have to be GMP compliant there, but you know what I mean? Like for your cold or whatever.
Totally.
So yeah, William Sif, and he just has a book out. He has a new book out, which I haven't gotten yet, and I'm excited to get it. So yeah. Definitely. Props to
what's this
Bill
book
if you're
about?
listening.
What's this new
I
book
think it
about?
is a lot about kitchen medicine,
Oh, okay.
actually. And I would say he was an influence in that too, like really always into the medicinal properties of culinary herbs, which of course Ayurveda is like really keyed into as well. Um, so I think it's a lot about that. It's like this whole protocol for just like being like in optimal health and working with like bitters, antioxidant herbs, kind of like superfoods, but like things that don't necessarily have to be from like halfway across the globe kind of thing.
Totally. Do you think William Sif would join me on the show to promote his book at some
He
point?
totally would. I'm just speaking for you right now, Bill. No, I think he would. He's probably promoting his book.
Okay. I've never met him,
Yeah,
so that would be awesome to meet him.
yeah,
Uh,
we should.
so Ayurveda, TCM, and Western herbalism, do you practice kind of all three, or do you focus on one more than the other?
I do. I'm like such an amalgam. I'm like totally a very like folk trained in both those things, I would say. Like, so I feel like my Ayurvedic training definitely came from Bill, definitely just from like direct, like someone would walk in the door and he'd be like, oh man, their vata deranged. Like, like just from the way, I mean, that sounds so bad. I don't mean that. Like, he didn't say that about everybody, but like just in that way that you learn, like it was a very old school apprenticeship in that way, where like we could talk about someone after they left but like within the
Yeah.
context of education and like what you noticed and because there's so much you can tell just from when someone walks in a door kind of thing. So definitely very folk trained in Ayurveda from him as well as Chinese medicine, but I also studied that with Chris Morano, who's an herbalist here. You should also study interview, who I
Yeah.
also studied with. So yeah, and then I also along the way took an acupressure training, but I never like put that into practice, but just to get more with the meridians and just like knowledge of that. But no, it's very much like when I have a client sitting in front of me, sometimes I'm looking at it like certain patterns I see just from a Chinese medicine lens, some from an Ayurvedic, and then some from the more like traditional tissue states. So it's very diverse. I think I'm very much like it's a lot of like my folk training that comes through with that, I think.
Just a quick break from the show to thank our presenting sponsor, Oshala Farm. Oshala Farm is a beautiful and vibrant certified organic herb farm based in Southern Oregon, where they grow and sell over 80 different plant species. The founders, Elise and Jeff Higley, have been longtime friends, so I highly trust their growing methods and ethics. You'll love the potency and vibrancy of all the herbs they have to offer. To learn more and purchase their herbs and other organic goods, head to oshalafarm.com. So thanks once again to Oshala Farm for sponsoring the Herbalist Hour. Now back to the show. Enjoy. What else do you do with milk and honey herbs? You got a business, you got a clinical practice, you got a school. Like, what is milk and honey herbs all about?
Yeah, so it really is by and large education. So I do these in-person classes based in bioregional herbalism. It's an apprenticeship. It's called From the Roots Up. And there's a year one and a year two. And they meet like one meets March to November, one meets April to November, once a month. And they're all outside. They're all on a lot of our like local farms here because we have a really rich agricultural area. And farms are like honestly one of the best places to forage, really. And they're all organic farms. So that's like a huge part of the work I do. And then I have my Patreon, which is called the Veriditas Community. And I do monthly classes on there, and there's a huge class library. So that's kind of like my super accessible offering. It's like so cheap, and you get this huge class library. And then I will do like herb walks and workshops and things like that throughout the year. Like a really fun one I did this summer was a beach medicine class that was in collaboration with the Martha's Vineyard library system. It wasn't on Martha's Vineyard, which would have been amazing, but
Sure.
um, but yeah, so I'll just like partner with a lot of local places. Feel like I'm forgetting some big part of my business. Oh yeah, and my winter online series. I do spice rack medicine, and that's
Sure.
a big part of my work as well. And it's all in kitchen medicine, and that's an online offering, just like the Veriditas on Patreon. So it's kind of like bioregional herbalism, kitchen medicine, and then I have my practice as well.
For sure. Well, you just opened up registration for Spice Rack Medicine. I want to say it's winter series. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, I mean it's
Okay.
mouthful. It's pretty much spice rack medicine
There you
winter
go.
online series. Yeah.
And you open up registration once per year. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about Spice Rack Medicine?
Yeah, so I mean, it really just grew out of things that I'm excited to share about. And I'm also really inspired just around like accessible herbalism, the whole idea that like, what do you have at your disposal? You got some ginger and your garlic, like you can make some medicine, you know? So I love that. I love helping people feel like they can use herbs that they feel comfortable with. And so that's another big reason I love to teach about that, because I've just learned over the years that like people are scared of herbs, but they're not necessarily scared of like parsley because they get that it's safe and that you can eat it, you know? So I love that. And it's like this huge gateway. I just find that also with my students so often where they're like, well, my family members won't take like the tincture I made them, but they're all about the broth, you know? So that's kind of like where it came out of. And then I taught it in person for many years and then kind of outgrew the space that I was in. And then I was just really lucky because I recorded it all. Like, I think 2018 or 2019 is when I put it online. So I was just like lucky to already have made that transition basically. And it's a 6 module class. I open registration now at this time of year, but then we don't start until January. So it's like after the holidays, all of that. And I offer it like that so that I can do more like personal touch with it kind of. So we have 3 live calls during the period that the modules come out. They come out like weekly for 6 weeks, but it's you never lose access. It's not one of those classes where it goes away. So sometimes people just watch the replays of the calls. Yeah, and we go over, I mean, like like the medicinal properties, like the core of the class is like the medicinal properties of, I want to say it's almost 20 different culinary herbs. So we go like really deep from all the Mediterranean herbs to all this like the seed spices. But then we also talk about nutritives, because those are such food as medicine. We talk about seaweeds, medicinal mushrooms, adaptogens, broths, and just all the ways that you can, all the kitchen medicine preparations like honeys and ghee. We do herbal ghee. So it's like all these things that like all you really need is like what would be in your kitchen, to like make these really awesome, potent medicines. So, yeah, that's what it's about.
I've never made ghee before. I've always wanted to. Is that essentially melting butter and then like skimming off I don't know what you're skimming off, but then it becomes
Yeah,
this like clarified butter or something?
totally. Yeah, it's clarified butter. Exactly. You're getting out like the milk solids.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, it's awesome. Essentially what it is it's like you're concentrating the fat of the butter because all the water is cooking out. So it's like more concentrated form of butter,
Mm.
basically, and it's shelf stable. So like unlike butter, which like will go rancid much faster, ghee you can keep unrefrigerated. I mean, it eventually goes rancid, but like way longer, like months and months.
Yeah, you'll have consumed it by that point.
And that's the thing. I'm like, have I ever? Yeah, but it's like it is like months, and then it's awesome for infusing herbs in too, because then you can cook with that. So yeah, it's really easy. You should make it.
Yeah, I need to. I'm all about making more and more of like say like hummus. Like instead of buying
Yeah,
it from the store pre-made, in our family we're trying to make more and more of these things like the pestos and hummus. And now I need to make some
yeah.
ghee. What kind of herbs are you infusing in the ghee?
So I think in class I demo making an ashwagandha spiced ghee. So it's like
Uh,
ashwagandha, yeah, with like cardamom, cinnamon, ginger. But yeah, I mean, you can do it with everything. You can make a turmeric ghee, you can make a golden milk ghee. But I like doing the adaptogens because
yeah.
like ghee is such brain food because it's got so much fat in it, and it is considered like a nootropic. Like ghee is considered really good for your nervous system and your brain, and very like calming. It like soothes those frayed nerves, like because your brain is something like what, like 60% fat or something. So it's just like brain food. So I like to do the adaptogens because it's just like a good way to deliver them. And then ghee is also said to help deliver the herbs like deeper into the tissues of the body. Like it's a really good carrier. So.
Mm. Have you ever made like a lion's mane infused ghee?
No, no, I always just eat the lion's mane because it's so delicious.
It is delicious. Why? Yeah. Why bother with that?
Yeah.
So you said there's 6 modules. Do you have them in front of you? Are you able to like break them up and tell us what the
I
modules are?
probably know what they are. I don't have
Yeah.
them in front of me, but I feel like the first one is all about the energetics of the 5 flavors. So we just spend a ton of time talking about, sweet, salty, bitter,
Mm,
sour, and pungent, and, what to expect of those different flavors. Because, like, I really want my students to have that foundation because if down the line they meet an herb that they might not even know a ton about, but if you like tasted it, let's say it was black pepper and they didn't know specifically about black pepper, like the goal is like, after having taken that, like they're like, oh, this is so pungent. Like I know a lot about what this is going to do in the body, like I'm all about the organolepsis, like all about it. And so that's the first class. And then just like kitchen medicine basics. And then the second module gets into the Mediterranean herbs like sage, thyme, rosemary, oregano, basil. I'm sure I'm missing one, but yeah, did I say rosemary? I think I did. And then this third module, I think, is all the carrot family spices. So like coriander, cumin, fennel, anise. And then I feel like the fourth I just call like the pungent herbs, as they're not in like the same family, but it's like the chai spices, turmeric, ginger, garlic, all the really like intense ones, cardamom, cinnamon. And then the next module, I think, is seaweeds, broths, and nutritives. And I think the final one is adaptogens and ghee and things like that. I think so. It's like, and food as medicine adaptogens, and like, so it's all within the container of like, and how to eat it. Like,
sure. Uh, who are you trying to like say target this class to? Or is this kind of more on the beginner side, or is pretty much anybody, anybody interested in herbs and cooking?
well, I should look at the whole part on the page where it's like, who is this class for? Honestly, I feel like it's for people that already, I think it's for both. Like it's for people who already love cooking and are just like really excited to kind of enhance the medicinal action of their foods. And then I feel like it's also for people that are really kind of new and a little bit like tentative about both herbs and cooking and like really simple, easy ways. Like they can make like chimichurri and like put that
Mm,
on their chicken or whatever,
totally.
So I feel like honestly, a lot of my classes, I do try to kind of like appeal to a wide audience and kind of have something for everyone. And just having run it for a while, I definitely get like both those kinds of students. Like,
Yeah,
so yeah. So come one, come all, anybody.
I love it.
We do go deep on the groups. I will say that. Like we pull a lot of research and things like that. So there is like there's a lot of clinical pearls because I can't help but to bring that in when I'm teaching, So it's a bit of a both and.
Do you have a ballpark as to like how many hours the total course is? I've never asked that of someone before, but I'm just kind of curious because it sounds like there's so much material in the course.
I feel like, oh gosh, I think it's on the sales page. I want to say it's at least 15 plus different hours of both audio and video. So it's like a lot of audio lectures and then like video demos. And so I feel like it's like 15 plus,
Wow.
but I could be wrong. It could be more. And then the handouts, it's like 100 pages. It's like it's basically a book. And I do
Wow.
have students like tell me all the time. Like I just actually um ran a kimchi class. I did like a fall roots kimchi class in person, and I had someone come who are like, "Oh, I make the recipes all the time from your spice rack medicine book because my mom took it and it made me happy." And I do hear that. So like people use it like a book. So that is a pretty big resource for the class as well. Tons of recipes.
Is kimchi in the class, in the
I
course?
think it is, but I
Got
don't
it.
think there's not like a ferments section.
Right.
Is there? Gosh, I don't know. Should add it.
You should add it. I know bone broth's probably in there too, yeah.
Yeah, there's a big herbal bone broth section. We get into that a lot because it's like my favorite thing ever. So yeah, the podcast I did for you guys a long time ago.
Yeah, thank you for that. By the way, dear listener, Jade made a bone broth module for our Art of Frugal Nutrition course. In fact, I want to say you were one of the original 3 modules that when we released the course. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for that, Jade. That was awesome. I still refer back to it sometimes, but
Oh, nice.
you've brought this up a couple of times. You've used the word. We've all heard this before. Let food be thy medicine. or let food be your medicine. I'm just kind of curious what that means to you.
Yeah, well, I mean, in tons of like if you look at a lot of intact traditions of herbalism around the world, it's like you start with the food before you start with anything else. Like if someone isn't feeling well, you're making like a medicinal dish first, before you're giving them like andrographis or I don't know, like some really heavy hitting plant. So that I feel like food as medicine is really just folk medicine at its core is like really where, and in a lot of places too, like it's not lost. Like people just know, honestly, that like different herbs are helpful for different things. It's really beautiful to see actually. So I feel like food as medicine really is herbalism, and I feel like it's kind of like the oldest form of herbalism. So that's, we just forget about how many foods are medicinal, you know? So it's like the
Absolutely.
parsley garnish. It's the classic example. It's like
Right.
now it's like this little thing you take off, but it used to be there to help your digestion. So yeah,
We've been garnishing with arugula a lot. That's like become one of our favorites. It's got kind of like that pungency to it. There's probably some
totally.
bitter action going on there too. But yeah, I really love that spice to it.
Oh, arugula is so medicinal. Yeah.
It's funny. We'll buy like a container of it, and we'll cook it down a little bit, and it'll go from this huge amount to just this tiny amount. But I'm like, hey, that's probably packing such a nutrient punch right there.
That's true. That's like it is one of the most bitter things that and pungent, but like
Yeah.
pungent we have more of. It's one of the most bitter things we have that's like in the grocery store in some ways,
Yeah.
other than like coffee and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you tell the audience where to learn more about spice rack medicine? Is milkandhoneyherbs.com.
Yeah, go to my website and then it'll link you to Teachable, which is where we host the class. But my website will be like your place to go to learn more. It'll be very obvious. So
Love it. Well, since we're releasing this during the winter time or getting close to the winter time, I'm just kind of curious if you have any suggestions to the Herb Rally audience, some ways that we could kind of prepare for winter, whether that's culinary or using herbs or anything like that.
yeah, I mean, personally, I'm a really, really, really big fan of eating seasonally. So, and also kind of bringing like energetics into that. So in the winter, our digestive fire is lower, it's colder outside. We're a little microcosm of that macrocosm. So really just like focusing on things that are well cooked, well spiced, not necessarily cayenne, like all the culinary herbs, though watery. Those are going to be things that are much easier to digest. And then our kidneys are really receptive during that time. And that's more like Chinese kidneys. But water-based medicine is a really great way to get your food as medicine herbs. So it's a really good time to be doing your broths, doing your stews. So even if like you just one thing you did was make like an herbal bone broth or just, herbal broth and you froze a bunch of it and just tried to have like a quart of that a week that you like cooked your rice in or used as a base of soup or stew. I think that'd be a really great way. And then just like really honoring that transition into the winter months and like, trying to be appropriate with that in terms of like acknowledging that your digestive power just isn't going to be as high. So that's one simple thing you can do.
I get so annoyed when I run out of bone broth.
It's the worst.
And I like refuse to go to the store. Sometimes I'll just do it, but almost never. I always try to have some form of broth in the fridge,
Yeah.
because I'll look on the back of even say like the organic broth, and sometimes I'll see sugar in the ingredients list, and I'm like, what's the point of that? You know what I mean?
So weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, not necessary. I'm the same though. It's like it's a staple for sure. And in the fall and winter. I don't really make it in the summer. Like that's
Yeah.
different stuff, but yeah.
Really? So you're not making bone broth during the summertime because you like it's more of a seasonal thing for you, fall, winter type of thing.
Yeah, because I'm just like oriented towards the seasons. So I don't know. In
Right.
the summer, I don't know what I do in the summer. Flower medicine, try to stay cool. Like
Sure.
the
Yeah.
summer is my hardest season. Like, so I just try to swim all the time. It's like the season that my body is the least at home in. So usually it's just like management. So it's like lots
Right.
of rows and like, yeah, like water. But yeah, I'm really oriented with the seasons. So yeah, I bring it in the fall and the winter. But then that's like really fun because when you're making your big first batch in the fall, it feels so cozy and just
Totally.
nourishing.
I mean, are you making a recommendation to us or me? Like maybe we shouldn't be consuming broth year round, or is it just kind of a personal preference for you?
Oh, it's more personal for me, but like if I was working with someone and they, had some like major gut issues and it was June, like I wouldn't be against suggesting that they do some broth, you know?
Sure.
So I think it's good all times of year, but I just don't cook in the same way in the summer that would like even use the broth. Like, I mean, occasionally I do like warm it up and just sip it from a cup. Like, I do love doing that
Sure.
too. But in the summer, there's just like fewer entry points for the broth because it's more like fresh stuff, more raw
Totally.
stuff,
Yeah.
so I guess there's that too. But no, you can
Absolutely.
have bone broth every day. You'd be
All
good if
right.
you.
Well, we cook with it a lot, and yeah, sometimes I'll just consume it plain, like you said. I'll put a little salt
Yeah,
in there, and it's
it's so
delicious.
good like that.
We've
Yeah.
been having miso a lot lately, which I'm also have not gotten to making yet, but I would love to learn how to make miso. But yeah, sometimes we'll warm up some broth and then put some miso in there.
That's like one of the simplest, easiest things. I love doing that too. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, anything else you want to cover with the spice rack medicine before we move on to the next subject?
No, thank you for asking. And yeah, I feel like if people still have questions, reach out to me, email me, whatever, all the ways to get in touch, and I'm happy to talk more.
Sweet. Well, let's talk about some plants. I read in your bio. I love that you included a few plants of your favorite in your bio. You mentioned rose, Japanese knotweed, and dandelion as some of your favorite plants, and I'm just kind of hoping you could tell us why you're infatuated with some of these. So
Yeah.
why don't we start with rose?
Okay, that is a good word to use, infatuated. Okay, so the rose, yeah. So the wild rose, it's Rosa multiflora that is really abundant in the Northeast. And I started working with it, I want to say around 2014, 2015, because I've been teaching my bioregional herbalism classes for over 10 years in the valley. And at that time, people weren't really working with the wild rose medicinally, but it was like everywhere. And so it was one of those things where it's kind of a both and where I feel like the plant kind of caught my eye, but the plant was also like, hi, like medicine that everyone's ignoring, And so I kind of like went down a deep dive with rose, really internalized how like any rose species anywhere can be worked with medicinally. Like there's no such thing as like a poisonous plant in the rosa genus, and so got to know them a little bit more. And just again, with just simple organoleptic assessment, like wild rose, Rosa multiflora. I mean, it is the most rosy rose ever. Is it in Wisconsin? Do you guys have it?
That I don't know. I'm still learning the plants around here. I don't know about multiflorum. I've seen some wild rose, but yeah, I'm not sure about the
Yeah, I
species.
mean, because there are native
Yeah,
roses, obviously,
sure.
also. But yeah, anyway, it blooms like early summer. So, and you can't miss it once if you like walk by one. So, yeah, so I feel like that rose was like one of kind of like a real, I mean, they were already bioregional herbalism classes, but it was like kind of one of these experiences and getting to know that plant and really like yeah, just like getting this embodied idea of like, wow, there's all these plants around us people just ignore. And it kind of feeds into Japanese knotweed in the same way because wild rose is listed as invasive. It is, I mean, it's a very abundant, opportunistic plant, but because of that, it's so easy to just shut off like, your brain and being open to it having any usefulness, and even being trained like in plant biology in college, like I had to unlearn a lot of that because there's this thing that comes along with like if a plant is invasive, then it has zero value. And that's not always true, like
Right.
and so I feel like rose was a big teacher plant for me in that. And then I feel like rose still kind of paves the way for that because I mean, people still really, really vilify that plant and really hate that plant, just like Japanese knotweed.
Right.
When if you can like help them understand, like, hey, it's rose and it's everywhere. And there might be a reason for that. We might really be in need of that medicine, so yeah, so I work with all the parts of it. I work with the flowers, the leaves, the hips, the roots are also medicinal, but I haven't dug up the roots ever. And in like a multitude of different ways. And I love that about rose too, is it's like this solstice early summer herb, but then in the fall you get the beautiful hips. So it just provides like lots of opportunities to forage and yeah.
What are you using the roots for? I suppose it's highly astringent.
They're super astringent. Yeah, so no, I've never made a tincture or anything, but they are considered extremely astringent, just kind of like blackberry root. So they're like a major diarrhea remedy.
Right.
So, but I've never used them.
There you go.
Haven't had to, so that's good.
I feel you. Awesome. Well, yeah, like you were mentioning, very weedy, and I suppose Japanese knotweed is also highly weedy, and dandelion as well. So I love that three of your plants that you mentioned are these very weedy species. What's
Yeah.
going on with Japanese knotweed?
Yeah, so I mean, like, kind of the same, right? Like, if you just took Japanese knotweed at face value, you would just be like, oh my gosh, this plant is absolutely awful. It's, like displacing native plants. It's, all these things. And I also really love like the nuance that these plants kind of invite us into, where there's just, you can't really make an all or nothing statement about them because you can also say, well, here's Japanese knotweed growing in this, like along a stream in a meadow that's been incredibly overgrazed, and suddenly it's holding the bank in place and starting to slow erosion so that you can get invertebrates like breeding in the water again and like really like turning the ecology around, right? But then you can also see that a chunk of root can go downstream, land on a bank where there's really intact native plants, and before long displacing them. So it just invites us into like that. Essentially, yeah, just like that nuance. And so Japanese knotweed, I feel like, is really the same in the sense that it's easy to say it's all bad. But I feel like Japanese knotweed personally is gonna be one of those plants, like if it all burns down, like we're gonna have knotweed. And it's like not only is it like it's the highest source of resveratrol in the world. So
Wow.
resveratrol is the antioxidant that's in red wine that gives it its heart healthy properties. Japanese knotweed like blows it out of the water. It's in the roots. It's also in the shoots. So it's a traditional food in Japan. Like they eat the shoots. And so it's just provides this food and medicine in all these places. It's extremely anti-inflammatory, with that resveratrol, good for the heart, antibacterial, antiviral, anti-spirochete. So it's also this amazing lime herb, which in the Northeast, like we have to deal with. So I just feel like it's like, just want to invite people into that where it's like, yeah, I'm not sitting here saying that it's like great when it like rolls up and suddenly like all the ramps where the ramps used to grow, now there's Japanese knotweed. It's not that, but it's just sort of like thinking about ways that it could be helpful in other ways. And also like just plant time, which I feel like is so different from human time. Like just kind of like it's an early successional plant. Like I wonder if it will be here forever. I don't know. The problem is that humans are really good at creating that disturbance that those early successional plants love. But I read somewhere, and I've never seen it, but I would love to. But I read that in Japan, where it's native, that it's an early plant to come in after a volcanic eruption, and it'll literally like bust through the magma and like grow out of that where like nothing else can, which is so similar to how it grows in like parking lots and things. But that over time, succession does occur. But what it's done is it's like created a substrate, it's turned that into soil, it's created biomass. So sometimes I just think of it more as like an earth healer, and it's more like a symptom rather than the problem. That's kind of how I think of knotweed sometimes. Um, but yeah.
It's kind of how I was thinking of the bindweed that used to grow in my yard in Oregon. Is I used to be like, gosh, this bindweed's growing everywhere, but then I started thinking it's probably healing the soil to one
Yeah.
degree or another. Have you ever tried the cooked shoots of the Japanese knotweed?
Oh yeah, I love them. I do them all the time in the spring. And it can be a perennial
Oh,
vegetable. So that's the other amazing thing is like, so you can harvest them in the spring and then eventually it'll just keep coming and eventually it'll, turn into the whole plant, which is incredible if you haven't seen them, and they can be like 13 feet tall. Like they can just get so big in 1 year. But if you were to continually harvest, you could eat those shoots, I mean, like April through probably September or October, which is also amazing.
are people ever making some sort of ferment out of those as well?
You know, that's a good question. I've definitely seen there's a lot of wild food enthusiasts in
Sure.
this area. So I've seen like a chutney. I've seen a Japanese um knotweed shoot chutney. I haven't seen anyone ferment them. There's kind of a question as to whether the flowers are edible or not. I haven't ever found research that shows if they are or not.
Mm.
But it's in the dock family, so I don't know that it would be, I don't know, but I've wanted to ferment the flowers. I wanted to do like a wild soda with the flowers,
Oh
but
wow.
I haven't ever. So yeah, I usually just cook the shoots. I do have a recipe on my blog for them actually. I just cook them often like asparagus, even with asparagus. Like I like them kind of savory, but some people they're very sour, do them as a sweet and they'll use it instead of rhubarb and do like a Japanese knotweed, like strawberry,
Oh
like
wow.
because they're very sour. They're really good. So they
That's a
can go
great
like
idea.
sweet or savory. So they're really versatile also.
Yeah. Do you have any idea if like Japanese culture kind of vilifies it the same way that we do here in the US?
Wow. I don't think so, but I mean, I have
No.
no idea. I've never been to Japan. But I mean, I
Yeah.
definitely have read that it is like, like sold in markets and stuff
Yeah.
there, like the bunches of the shoots. So I would think no.
Yeah.
I mean, also it's so interesting, right, to go like to a place where a plant is native to because it probably doesn't act the same way as it does here on the
Right.
landscape.
Yeah.
So they might not have the same issues with it, like destroying foundations and things like that. It's a powerful herb.
Are you going back to like the same stand every single time to harvest?
I do a lot actually.
Yeah.
So one of the cool things about the classes that I teach is I've been teaching on some of these local farms now for like over 10 years. I've also lived in the valley for, oh my gosh, well, a really, really long time because I'm from like just south of here. Went to college up here, kind of went out west for a few years, and then have been back in this area now. I want to say it was like the early 2000s. So there's areas that I've been in relationship with for, yeah, like well over 10 years. And I do visit a lot of the same places.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't have really any experience with Japanese knotweed, so this is fascinating to hear about. I'm not sure how like say woo woo you get or anything like that, but do you ever like think about how you were saying that it's good for Lyme in quotes or whatever, and then it grows right there where it's needed. Do you ever think
Yeah.
about that? Like what's your take on that Japanese knotweed growing right abundantly right where there's a lot of Lyme disease?
No, totally. I mean, well, I've read that essentially like the spread of knotweed like has spread with Lyme.
Oh,
Like
wow.
there's like yeah, like there's some herbalists that have been like, here's the map. Boom, boom. And so definitely in the Northeast, like I would say among herbalists, there's kind of like consensus that it's like this plant has really been coming in with Lyme. You could make a lot of arguments with that as well, because then the deer come in because the more you fragment the landscape, I don't, you know what I mean? So it's
Yeah,
like to me, it's like a both and. But no,
totally.
I mean, you heard me with wild rose. I'm definitely kind of an animist herbalist. Like, I
Sure.
do believe these plants show up when and where we need them. Like, I don't think it's a coincidence that rose is like a weed. Like, I just, and that knotweed is a weed that,
Right.
we need. So I'm with you. You can go woo for sure. Yeah.
I always just think it's fun to think about that kind of stuff. I brought this up on the
Definitely.
podcast before. Where I live, Wisconsin. I don't know if you've heard, but Wisconsin is a heavily drinking state. In fact, I want to say like out of the top 10 drinking states and all of drinking alcohol,
Yeah,
I want
yeah.
to say like six of them are in Wisconsin, including where I live, Appleton. And I've never seen so much burdock root. So I just thought I just always think it's really interesting to have all that liver medicine everywhere.
Oh, totally. I would say yes, that like burdocks definitely like here to help. Yeah.
Yeah, amen. Awesome. Well, why don't we go into dandelion? What do you love about dandelion?
Oh, I love dandelion. I just love dandelion for all the reasons. Gosh, I mean, there's sort of like I feel like dandelion is actually like the unofficial like emblem of herbalism. Just like this resilience that's coming through
Totally.
the cracks. Like I just, the accessibility. I've learned over the years that if there's one plant that people know how to identify, it's dandelion, even if it's just so that they can like pull it out of their yard or whatever. Um, but yeah, actually, I'll tell a little dandelion story
Please.
actually, that I feel like really sums up like dandelion's medicine. So, you probably remember the whole fire cider trademark battle,
Oh,
right?
do I?
So that
Yep.
happened right here because that company was in the Berkshires, which is just if you keep going west in Massachusetts, you hit the Berkshires. And so the trial was in Springfield, which is pretty close to here. So me and some local herbalists just were like able to attend, do some support, like, what herbalists would do, or like bring them food and tea and stuff. And I remember like the day that we were waiting for the trial results to come through. I think it was November, actually. It was definitely the fall. And oh gosh, or was it early spring? It was like a shoulder season where dandelion wouldn't normally be blooming yet. So one of those. And I remember we looked outside the courthouse windows because it was like all glass. And right outside, growing out of the cracks, like at the courthouse patio, was this dandelion in bloom with three flowers. And there were three pendants, the fire cider three. And we were just like, we just had this herbal. We were like, oh my God, we're gonna win. Like it's gonna happen, and we did, and I just feel
Wow.
like that's like the spirit of dandelion, just such a people plant. Like it's just like I just feel like humans and dandelions, we have a very, very long history together throughout the entire world, everywhere. No one knows where dandelion's from, which is great.
That's beautiful story. I got goosebumps, and check this out. I just got this
It was
recently.
so special. Oh,
You can see that. Yeah. Oh,
isn't
yeah.
it Herb Rally's logo? Is dandelion in your logo?
It is. Yeah, we got you can kind of see right here. It's like the leaf.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I call it my gateway herb. It was the first herb that I found out you could like eat, and it just fascinated me. So yeah, I always have a fondness for dandelion as well.
That is great. Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing about the weeds. Was there anything else you wanted to say about dandelion?
Just hang out with them. Don't forget about the leaves in the fall. I think that's a really nice thing to remember, is that dandelion leaves get a whole second season in the fall. It's a great time to work with them. So if you're working with roots, don't forget about the leaves. Bring those home and eat them. So
That's right.
yeah.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, the leaf is part of the logo. We just wanted to create something a little different than using the whole plant or whatever. But yeah,
I like it. Yeah.
Thank you. That was Amanda's design. Well, why don't we transition a little bit? I'm kind of curious how we've talked about this a little bit already, but I'm kind of curious how you make your living as an herbalist overall. Can you speak a little bit about like your clinical practice?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, I am really lucky that I transitioned to full-time herbalism,
That's
gosh, like a
amazing.
while ago. Yeah. I mean, it's not easy, and it's why I have so many pans in the fire, kind of,
Mhm.
like it's like this class, that class, and that's, in my opinion, really, if you do want to be like financially viable as an herbalist, I think it is pretty important to be diversified, but I think it's also really important to kind of know your limits. So, for instance, in my clinical practice, I don't blend up all the formulas for my clients myself. I work with two local apothecaries, that like pharmacy style. So I have one, Blue Crow Botanicals. They're awesome. For my tinctures, and they grow a lot of their stuff locally. They sustainably wildcraft a lot locally. And then I work with another apothecary, Sage Green Botanicals, for my tea blends. So that's been a way that I've made my clinical practice doable for me. Because if I had to stock all the herbs, I mean, you see the herbs, but it's not like, if I had to stay on top of like inventory and all of that, like it would be a flop. I've also learned that I'm really bad at mailing things. So
I gotta.
like, oh, you got your meows. Yeah. So it's kind of like, I feel like with the clinical piece, it's like I've known a lot of herbalists that have just been like, I just can't do this, it's just too much, and they'll just drop their practice. And for me, I feel like honing in on that is part of what's made my practice doable. And both those places are mail order, by the way. If other herbalists are like, that sounds good, because it's great. And they're run and owned by herbalists, so it's actually really nice to be in the community. So yeah, and I feel like, if it was just my clinical practice, there's no way it would be viable. Like, I feel like it's very like ebb and flow. It's kind of like impossible to know when you're going to be slammed or when you're going to have like a more fallow period. It's just hard to say. But I think because I have all the other things, that's like the diversity that really helps me stay viable. I think the other thing is just kind of choosing like when I created my program, the From the Roots Up, like there weren't herbalists in the area teaching that kind of stuff. And I wanted to be really respectful of all my teachers and like fill a niche, like a plant.
I like
So
that.
just, like, and I just feel like that's a way to be successful as well. Like, don't try to be someone else, like be yourself and like look and see what is needed, because that's what's gonna bring you abundance and students and things like that, so I feel like that's been a part of my journey as well. And then I had the background in botany, so I just wanted to bring that sort of like what I call like herbal ecology kind of forward as well, which is a part of our classes, like reading the herbal landscape and stuff like that too. So I feel like that's kind of how I've been lucky enough to make a go of it. And then I've also lived in this area for, like I was saying, like so long. So I have so many amazing community connections, and that's been incredibly supportive as well, and partnering with farms or friends or, so I feel like that's something else too. And I know not everyone has that privilege, but it's like really just kind of accessing and working with your community. I think that's been really helpful too.
How does that relationship work with the people that are filling the orders for the tinctures? Are they taking like a percentage, or are you placing an order ahead of time, or what is that relationship like?
Yeah, so it's different, depends on like the place. So I don't make any percentage back for any of them. It's
Yeah.
just like sending business their way. There
Gotcha.
are some apothecaries I feel like where can get percentage back. But these ones don't do that. And I'm okay with that because I'm not trying to make my herbal practice like my whole thing, like,
I see. So
yeah.
you're telling a client, or you're suggesting to a client what formulations they should take, and then they just order it from that company or one of those
Yeah,
two
and I send
companies.
the formula to
Gotcha.
them and then they
Very
like keep
cool.
it on file. Like it's really like pharmacy style. It's
That's
really,
awesome.
really well smooth, and so then they don't always have to even go through me. And then I have the apothecaries, like I do have a way for them to kind of let me know when people refill things so I can at least like have a sense of what's going on, but I don't have to be like a middleman usually, unless I tell a client like just go through that and then we'll make a new formula. But that's not usually how I work. So yeah.
So it sounds like your advice to, say, the budding herbalist or the herbalist that's looking to make this their career, diversify and have like lots of different streams of income.
Yeah, diversify, know what you are and aren't good at, like I'm really good at formulating, but I'm not really good at like keeping all the inventory to make the products and to ship and all of that. So like I definitely went through a phase in my business where I did I just threw it all like the spaghetti at the wall or whatever. And it's like, and I learned like, yeah, I kind of hate doing products like this, like, and then I'm like, you don't have to do everything,
Right.
you know? Like,
So we're not going to see a milk and honey herbs line at any point, a product line.
oh, no, no,
No.
no. But I love talking business stuff though. So anytime people want to, I think it's really interesting. And I think it's important to talk about. It's like small business owners.
Totally. Do you have any assistants at all?
No, so I need one. And that's the thing. I think that if I were going to do like formulate, well, I do formulate, but like blend the teas myself or whatever, I would need an apothecary assistant. I'd like, which I'm sure plenty of people would want to do, but like I need to have them come in and do that, keep track of inventory, because that's really not my strong point. But what I usually do is I usually take around one work trade for each year for the apprenticeship. And more often than not, they are sort of like, they're like my office assistant, like admin. So that's kind of how I'll do that, where they'll help me transition a website or, like stuff that I'm like, as a small business person, you kind of have to like, well, you don't have to know how to do it all, but you sort of do or learn. And again, I'd rather be like learning or out with the plants than like trying to figure out how to, I don't even know what things that I don't even want to have to think about, but like all the
Totally.
admin things.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
we're at the similar crossroads. It's Herbal is
Yeah.
just Amanda and I as of now, and we keep thinking like it'd be so fantastic to hire someone even part-time, but we're just not at that point yet. But yeah,
Totally. It's like
but
I
some
could be, but I want to like pay them really well. And
right,
it's
there's
like,
that.
yeah. And so it's like, so yeah. So far I've kind of just got through by I don't even know, just, again, my community and then often work trade support, which is really great.
Do you have any advice for an herbalist who's wanting to start a clinical practice specifically?
Yeah, just do it.
Yeah,
Just
just go
start
for it.
seeing clients. It's the number one thing you can do. And I know it can be really, really hard to feel like you're ready. It's like you'll never feel ready. I mean, that's the thing. You will just never feel ready. And I was lucky I had a mentor that who was also at Gold Thread Apothecary, a woman, Mary Blue, who she
Oh yeah.
came in and she was actually kind of apprenticing like directly with Bill Sif, and but we like worked alongside each other. And she has a whole training in Tibetan medicine, like very highly trained. And she opened an apothecary, Blue Dragon Apothecary, and she like recruited me in and she was like, Jade, you're starting, you're seeing clients, you're running the low cost clinic, and like just put this whole clinic in front of me. And she like basically like just pushed me out the door. I mean, I still actually, well, then Gold Thread closed. So yeah, it kind of all like happened at the same time. And I wonder if she hadn't just been like, do it, Jade, you're ready,
Yeah.
that I would have. So that can be another thing is like if you have a trusted herbal mentor or teacher, like just asking, just being
Yeah.
like, do you think I'm ready? Like, and if not, like what are the gaps you see? Like, because it can be really hard to see those things. And like I said, I don't know anyone who's seen clients who like when they first started felt ready to do it.
Right. Is
Yeah.
that the Mary Blue from the Firesider 3 or?
Oh, did I say Mary Blue? Mary Ryan.
Gotcha. Okay.
No, but I do love Mary. Yeah, no,
Okay. She's also in your neck of the woods, yeah? Mary Blue?
she is. She's in Providence.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. But no, it wasn't Mary Blue, but hi, Mary.
Hi,
Mary
Mary.
Ryan. Yeah.
Mary Blue will be on the show, I think in the next couple months. But
Oh, great.
as far as like starting your clinical practice, do you have any suggestions on pricing? Like where do you start with that whole thing?
Oh my God. It's the $1 million question. I literally will like go on my website and change the price. And then like a day later, I'll like change it again. Like I am all over the place with that. And I feel like honestly, I'm always underpriced in my
Yeah.
practice. But then I also feel like there's this whole thing of like kind of like what can the quote unquote like market bear? Like I feel like there's honestly, as a clinical herbalist, personally, I feel like the amount that like you're worth is honestly usually more than what people can pay.
Right.
Like my consults, my initials right now are 125. By the time this comes out, maybe they will have changed to 150. I don't know,
Yeah.
like it's possible, but it's probably worth $200 at least,
Yeah.
between like the hour and a half that you're sitting with someone, at least an hour and a half after, if you need to research, writing up their recommendations, formulating. And it's almost like to charge what you're worth can be really financially inaccessible for a lot of people. And I think there's a lot of my own kind of wiring there because in my business, like I really intentionally have really accessible offerings, which is what my Patreon is. It's $5 a month for like a 50 class library. I mean, it's like amazing. So in a way, I don't necessarily feel like I'm overcharging because it's like there's this offering, but that's just kind of where I'm at. And I do feel like if I were to raise my prices, it would price out so many people. Um, but that being said, I do hold 2 low income spots every month that people can just email me if they're not free. And I ran a low cost clinic for I don't even know how long. It was a long time, many years. So I always chronically underprice myself. So I'm the worst person to ask about pricing.
Are you getting a repeat customer or clients a lot, or are they a lot of
Yeah,
times
I
new
do.
people?
But
Yeah.
I've also learned over the years that the way I practice is like super tonic approached. So I'm
Yeah.
more the kind of herbalist that will probably formulate something that'll help you every day for the rest of your life if you kept taking it, as opposed to someone that might say, like, let's vent the heat, then let's like get digestion going. Like there are sometimes that I will work like that with clients, but more often than not, it's like more constitutional and you can just sort of see like, let's say it was a vata and you're just like, well, you just need some moistening. You need some nervous system tonics. You need some ghee. And like you're gonna be good. There might be other little things that come up, but like that's really gonna support you in being like more balanced, and if that's helping, those are herbs that you can take every day forever. So maybe it's a good sign that I don't have a ton of people. Like I don't personally like to have someone every month for like 2 years. Like I practice in it my way is like, no, I don't want you to have to need to keep coming to me. Like I want you to gain the tools and learn how to cook for your constitution. Like I'll share a lot of that with people. So I'm much more like tonic approach in my practice. And what I do get a lot, I would say, is clients that are repeat clients that will just like come back as needed for this or that, where they've been like really good for a while, but then they get like a knee injury or, like that kind of thing. Like I try to kind of tell people like I'm your herbalist now, like think of me as a resource, like reach out if you need me or if your family gets really sick. And I like to also be like a member of a team. Like I love it when someone also has an acupuncturist or therapy or, obviously like a primary, like that's kind of how I practice.
Do you think a lot of your role is like the accountability that you provide? Because a lot of times maybe your clients
Absolutely.
know what they should probably be doing, but then they seek your guidance for the accountability.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, it's like in my life personally, I work with a lot of like friends as like accountability partners and
Yeah.
stuff, but like I do, I mean, yeah, like definitely. I think so often people like already know the answers on what they need to do, honestly, and they just kind of want someone to like reflect that and like compassionately push them in that direction.
I call that the accountability buddy. Currently,
Accountability. Oh, that's
currently
good.
my daughter is my accountability buddy. We meet once a
That's
week.
awesome. I'm like totally stealing that. That's great.
Yeah, you should. It's pretty fun. Well, thanks for all the advice. Why don't we kind of wrap up with a fun question? I'm not sure if you saw this ahead of time or not, but it's called "Explain That Gram." And basically, for you and the audience, I'm going to show you a picture
That's
from your
funny.
Instagram account. Yeah, I stole this from another YouTube show called Hot Ones. But basically, I'm going to show you a picture of
Okay.
something from your Instagram, and you'll explain the greater story. So you see that?
Oh, hey,
Yeah,
echinacea.
it's
Yes.
beautiful. What's going on there?
So that's Pacific Botanicals. In the Applegate Valley, like Southern Oregon. And obviously that's a field of echinacea. And
Yeah.
so I'm an educator with Herb Farm. That's another part of my like herbal business. I'm a contractor and do education for them. So I'll go to like, I mean, it's pretty low key. There were years where I did more of it, but I'll go to like co-ops, health food stores, and train the staff on the Herb Farm products.
Hmm.
It's great. I love Herb Farm, and it's an awesome little gig. So that's another little herbal business tip is a lot of times herbal companies have herbal educator positions, which are great. They're great to supplement your work. So every summer we go out there and we hadn't. This is the first time we went back since before the pandemic. So we went to visit Pacific Botanicals, and this is just what it's like being in 3 acres of echinacea in bloom. It's like
Yeah.
buzzing. I mean, the energy, and right next to this was like 3 acres of marshmallow in flower, and just like the way it feels to be in 3 acres of marshmallow compared to echinacea. I mean, that's where like I feel like direct contact with the plants. There's like nothing better because
Yeah.
like you don't need to read a book like to know that echinacea is stimulating.
Yeah.
Like moves lymph, stimulates your immunity. So it's a very electric feeling, and that's me just like blissing out with echinacea.
I love that. And the reason I chose that picture is because I've had a similar experience when I visited Trout Lake Farm in Washington, just giant fields of echinacea. And it was such an experience, like you're saying, it's just such this electric buzzing feeling. And
It's electric
yeah,
and buzzing, right? Yeah, you felt it. Yeah,
absolutely. I didn't have the fortune of a giant field of marshmallow, but
to cool you down after,
yeah,
then you can like.
exactly. I don't suppose you visited Oshala Farm while you were out there as well.
No, we like always want to. So maybe next year because Herb Farm and Oshala do have a good relationship. So it's one of those things there's like I mean, there's so many incredible herb farms there. It's like amazing. It's a total hub. So maybe next year, because we've been like, as the educators, we've been like, we want to go to Oshala and we drive by it. I mean, it's like right there.
Right.
So yeah.
Well, I'll just take this opportunity to say thanks to Oshala Farm, because I don't know if you know this or not, Jade, but they're our presenting sponsor for the
Oh,
Herbalist
yay.
Hour. So shout out to Oshala Farm. Love Herb Farm as well. And I love your piece of advice that that's another route that herbalists could use to make
Yeah.
a living out of herbalism, is become some sort of consultant or
Yeah.
educator, as you say. So
Yeah.
awesome. Well, thank you for sharing. Why don't we wrap up here and tell folks again where people could learn more about you and your work? Maybe shout out some of your social handles as well.
Yeah, yeah. So Milk and Honey Herbs. My Instagram is at Milk and Honey Herbs, on Facebook as well. Tentatively on TikTok. I don't know. I have like one on there every 5 weeks that like 5 people see. I don't know.
Yeah,
So
we have 4 TikTok videos.
yeah, like I don't know how to make TikToks, and it's
Yeah,
like okay, like that's an example, right? Of I'm like I don't need to learn that. Like
you don't
it's
have to do
okay.
everything.
I don't have to. No, but I'm like over there just so I don't know, some fake Milk and Honey doesn't take it because that's like a
For
whole
sure.
thing.
Good point. Yeah.
So those are places. And then you can find me on Patreon, actually, Milk and Honey Herbs. Those are, I think those are the places. And you can join my mailing list actually through my website. And I really put a lot of love and care and information into my newsletters because I really value like these direct connections because, like as a small herbal business, we're like online on social media, we're more and more at the whim of like the evil algorithm, which is
Yeah.
like it's just favoring like over 1 million follower accounts. Like it's just
Right.
gotten nuts. So it's just really like, I would say if you love an herbalist, a great way to support them is just joining their mailing list so you can make sure that you get all the info. And I put a lot of good stuff in there. So I think those are the main ways. Yeah.
I can attest to that. I'm on your mailing list, and you really do appear to put a
Oh.
lot of effort in that. How many times per week or month do you think you come out with a newsletter?
Oh, I mean, I think I say seasonally, but then I feel like lately I've done more maybe every other month. And
Okay.
sometimes when it's getting closer, more like with the spice rack, when it's open like this during the open period for registration, I'll send like 4 or 5 emails. But that's the only time I do that because I try to like, I don't know. I don't want to spam my list. Um, so
You don't want to be
definitely
like Herb
seasonally.
Rally.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's, that is your business though.
That's the
So
expectation. Yeah, absolutely. It's
yeah.
good to set those expectations ahead of time. So
Yeah.
great tip as well, dear listener. Definitely create a newsletter. We use MailChimp. You could use, I don't know what you use, Jade, but yeah, there's lots of different services
I
out
switched to
there.
Flowdesk recently
Oh,
and it was
nice.
really good. So yeah.
And as Jade was saying, then you kind of own your audience. Say you're reaching the people that actually want to hear from you. They subscribe to your newsletter. So the way they could do that is just by going to milkandhoneyherbs.com. Is there some sort of like pop up or some area on your?
Yeah, there's a pop-up. There's like a polite pop-up. It comes up like, I don't know, a minute after you've been on the page or
Yeah.
something. And then there's little contact form, I think, on the homepage and the contact page where you can join the mailing list.
Awesome. And also, dear listener, be sure to check out Spice Rack Medicine. As of when we release this, it'll already be live for a day or so. So you can learn more about that at milkandhoneyherbs.com. Any closing thoughts, Jade, before we get out of here?
No, this was really fun. I
Yeah.
wasn't sure how it was going to be like on video and all that, but
You did
it's been
great.
really, really enjoyable. And I really like the Herbalist Hour. I love it.
Thanks.
There's so many herbalists, and I always tell people that, like,
Yes.
because you get questions like, how do I learn herbalism like from all over the country? And I'm like, there is an herbalist in your area.
Yeah.
They're everywhere. We're everywhere. And so I just love the work you're doing and just like
Thank you.
really uplifting that and interviewing all these really cool people because I'm learning about a bunch of new people in the community too. So
It
yeah.
truly
So
makes my day, Jade, that you actually have listened to some Herbalist Hours
yeah.
and you're actually enjoying it as well. So, and now you're a guest on the Herbalist Hour, and you can come back at any time you want to promote some course you got coming up or anything. It was really a
Cool.
great pleasure to have you on the show and get to
Cool.
know you a little bit more. So thank you.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Well, with that, we'll wrap things up and we'll see you in the next episode of the Herbalist Hour.
All right.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you. Bye, Mason. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks so much for watching today's episode of the Herbalist Hour. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. And if you want more great herbal content, be sure to subscribe to our Herbalist YouTube channel. If you enjoy these Herbalist Hour episodes and you'd like to join us live, you can do so by becoming an Herbalist Schoolhouse member. Learn more at herbalist.com/schoolhouse. And if you want to get your first 30 days for free, use coupon code YouTube30 at checkout. So our Herbalist Schoolhouse members get access to exclusive video classes, monographs, and a lot more herbal community discounts, along with joining these live Herbalist Hour interviews. So one more time, herbalist.com/schoolhouse. Enter coupon code YouTube30 at checkout to get your first 30 days for free. All right, we'll see you in the next episode, and take care.